Good morning, class 9 students. Today we are going to study politics chapter 1. What is democracy and why democracy? You have studied about democratic form of governments in your previous classes. In this chapter, we are going to study little more deeply about democracy. Very easily we can understand what is a democratic form of government, what is a non-democratic form of government. We used to say that all the elected governments are democratic form of governments. All the non-elected governments are non-democratic form of governments. And so, with this definition, we can clearly understand what is a democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. Democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. Why should we give a definition for democracy? If all the elected governments are called democracy, and if all the non-elected governments are called non-democracy, if we are able to understand what is a democracy, what is a non-democracy, why should we give a definition for democracy? This is because of only one reason. So when we discuss about rain, normally if there is a heavy downpour also, if there is a drizzling also, we call it rain. Normally all types of downpour we use to say rain. Even though if it is drizzling or heavy rainfall, both we use to say rainfall. But when we deeply think about what is drizzling, what is rainfall, only we should give definition for rainfall and definition for drizzling. Similarly, in democracy also like that. Some countries are conducting elections, but still they are not democracy. They are not following the principles of democracy. Some countries are elected and they are following all the principles of democracy. But some countries are there, they are conducting elections and all, but still that countries may not be democratic because they are not, even though elections are conducted, elected rulers are not getting opportunity to rule. We have studied that democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. Here also, in some countries, rulers are of course elected by the people, but elected rulers are not getting any opportunity to rule the country. Someone is controlled by, someone is controlling them. So such countries cannot be called democracy, clear democracies. So that is why we should give a definition for democracy to understand which is a right democratic form of government or a real democratic form of government, and which is a pretending democratic form of government. Pretending democracy means the countries which are trying to show that they are democracy, but actually they may not be democracy. Such countries are called pretending democracy. They may be conducting elections, they may be conducting all the procedures, but still they may not be a real democracy because people may not have the freedom or elected rulers may not have any right. So such problems may be there. So such countries cannot be called as democratic countries. So that is why in order to distinguish which is a real or right democracy, which is a pretending democracy, we should give definition for democracy. So with this definition, democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. With this definition, we can clearly distinguish which countries are democracy, which countries are non-democracy. Some examples are military rule in Myanmar. Military rulers are not elected by the people, and so they reach in power by using their force, and so they are not called elected form of government. They are not non-democratic form of government. The same way, rule of Augusto Pinochet in Chile. Augusto Pinochet was a military dictator. He overthrew the power of Salvador Allende. Salvador Allende was an elected leader, elected president of Chile. His elected president was overthrown and his powers were seized by Augusto Pinochet. So he reached in power by using his force. So he cannot be the country, and the country Chile under Augusto Pinochet cannot be called as a democracy. It is a non-democratic form of government. And rulers of Saudi Arabia, they are kings. So monarchical form of governments also cannot be called democratic because they are not getting power by through the process of election. They are getting power hereditarily. Hereditary transfer of power. So rulers of Saudi Arabia also can be called only non-democracy. But at the same time, India is an example of a democratic form of government. So with this definition, democracy is a form of government in which the rulers are elected by the people. We can understand what is a democracy, what is a non-democracy. But we cannot understand what is a real democracy and what is a pretending democracy. For that, we should know more features of democracy or more definitions of democracy. Then only we can clearly understand what is a real democracy, what is a pretending democracy. For that, let us see the coming features of democracy one by one. In order to understand what is a real democracy and what is a pretending democracy, let us see some features of democracy. First feature is that in a democracy, the final decision making power must rest with those elected by the people. In a democracy, the final decision making power must rest with those elected by the people. So let us see through one example whether a country can be called as democracy or not. Let's see the case of Pakistan, whether Pakistan was a democracy or not during a particular period. So we are going to see the case during 1999 2002, during that period. Major decisions by the elected leaders. I read this topic also. So in Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, he was a military dictator. He overthrew the elected government. He made a military attack and overthrew the elected government and captured power in 1999. After capturing the power, he declared himself as the chief executive head of the nation. So Pervez Musharraf was a military dictator. He overthrew democratically elected government and declared himself as chief executive head in 1999. And in 2002, he changed his designation as chief executive head and he declared himself as the president of the country. The head of the nation of Pakistan would be called as president. Since 2002, he changed his designation. And in 2002, he held a referendum. What is referendum? Referendum is a kind of voting in which people can give their vote for accepting or rejecting a proposal. Here, the proposal was that whether Musharraf want to continue in power or not. Whether people like Musharraf to continue as their ruler or not. People could give their vote in favor of Musharraf or against Musharraf. If majority of the people gave their vote in favor of Musharraf, he would continue in power for some more years. So in 2002, he held a referendum. But the people of Pakistan thought that Musharraf would lose his power. But the result was just opposite. He could continue in power 5 more years. That means the referendum was successful. Referendum was in favor of Musharraf But Pakistani media, Human Rights Association, and democracy activists, social activists, all of these organizations criticized that Musharraf won a referendum through malpractices. And in 2002, or in August 2002, he made some changes in Pakistani constitution in order to increase his power, because he wanted to be changed as an unquestionable ruler, and for that his power wanted to be increased, and the power of elected representatives must be reduced, and for that he made some changes in the Pakistani constitution, and that is called legal framework order. And as per this legal framework order, the power of Parvez Musharraf increased. And at any time, he could dismiss national and provincial assemblies, means the parliamentary members and state assembly members. At any time, he could dismiss all of them. And the work of civilian cabinet, that means work of government, was controlled by military and above all Musharraf himself. Work of government was controlled by Musharraf. And after this laws, after passing legal framework order, elections were held in Pakistan. People could give, as always, people could go to polling booth and they could cast their vote for choosing their representatives. So, in the eyes of the people, Pakistan changed like a democracy, because elections were there and they could give their vote in favor of their own representatives. But the problem happened, even though representatives were elected, they were like puppets in the hands of Musharraf, because they had no power. They had no right to decide anything. Even though if they made a law, if it was against the interest of Musharraf, he never accepted that law and he never allowed to pass that law. Even though if elected representatives taken a decision, if it was against the interest of Musharraf and military, such decisions were not at all taken or implemented. That means, even though elections were there, people could give their vote in favor of their own representatives, but still elected representatives had no power. Power rested in the hands of someone else, someone who was not elected by the people, because Musharraf was not elected, military officers were not elected. They reached in power by using their force. So people who got power by using their force ruled the country, really ruled the country. So in the eyes of the people all over the world, Pakistan was like democracy, because election was there, people could give their vote, people could choose their representatives, but still Pakistan cannot be called a democracy. And that's why here we can see the definition once again. If a country wants to be called as a real democratic country, what feature should be there? The final decision making power must rest those with the elected, those elected by the people. Here in the case of Pakistan, the final decision was always taken by Musharraf. He was a non-elected ruler. And so Pakistan cannot be called a real democratic country. That's why by seeing elections, we cannot call a country as a real democratic country. That's why when we when we call a country as a democracy, we should see whether this feature is existing or not. In a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. But in Pakistan, even the elections were there, even the people could go to polling booth and cast their vote in favor of their own representatives. But still, elected representatives had no power to decide matters. They had no power to make laws. Everything decided by Musharraf. Everything controlled by Musharraf. And so, we cannot say Pakistan was a real democratic nation. Now, let us see the second feature of democracy, to know deeply whether a country is a real democracy or a pretending democracy. This feature is that a democracy must be based on a free and fair election. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. That means the elected leaders after some years again they should face election, and if they are not doing well for the people, they should lose election and another leader should come in power. Another ruler should come in power. A democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. If the elected representatives are not doing well for the people, people can choose another set of rulers in power. So those currently in power have a fair chance of losing their power also if they are not doing well. So let's see two examples whether this is happening in all democratic countries or not. The case of China and Mexico, free and fair electoral competition. So in free and fair electoral competition means people should be free to decide to whom they should cast their vote. People should be totally free to stand as a candidate also, independent candidate. They should have opportunity to stand as independent candidate also. Instead of being part of any particular political party, people should have a chance of or opportunity for standing as independent candidate. Let's see whether these facilities are available in all the countries or not. Let's see the case of China and Mexico. So in China, Chinese Communist Party. This is the major political party existing in China. So 8 other small political parties are also there in China, but these small political parties are also supporting political parties of Communist Party of China. So around 3,000 members are there in Chinese parliament, which is called National People's Congress. Around 3,000 representatives. So all these representatives are elected from Communist Party of China or the 8 small parties which are supporting parties to Communist Party of China. So basically we can say that no independent candidate will be there in China. Nobody can stand as independent candidate. If anybody wants to stand as candidate, he or she must take membership in either Communist Party of China or 8 other small parties which are affiliated or which are attached to Communist Party of China. So basically all the representatives of National People's Congress would be from Chinese Communist Party of China. No other political party is allowed to function in China. Only one political party, Communist Party of China, and 8 small parties which are supporting parties of Communist Party of China. No other political party is allowed to function. No independent candidate is allowed. People should give their vote for the representatives of Communist Party of China or 8 small parties which are supporting parties of Communist Party of China. So all basically we can say that all the 3,000 people representatives would come from Chinese Communist Party. So now let's see here in case of Mexico. In Mexico one political party is there that is called PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. That is the name of political party of Mexico. What is the specialty of this party is that even though elections are conducting after every particular years, elections are conducting, always this party is only winning the election. That is not because of the popularity of this party. We know that in a democracy, if one political party is doing well for the people, of course people will choose that same party again and again. That is also possible. But here in Mexico, PRI is always winning the election. Not because of their popularity, but because of their fraud activities. Let's see what fraud activities they practiced. Government officers wanted to attend party meetings. All government officers of the country wanted to attend party meetings. Whenever PRI conduct their party meetings, all government officers must be ready to attend their party meetings. And government school teachers want to advise parents to give their vote in favor of PRI. And media was also controlled. That means media was not allowed to give negative report about PRI. Media always want to highlight their activities. If media found any negative activities, any fraud activities, that should not be reported. That means media was controlled. And sometimes in the last moment, just before the election, polling booth shifted from one place to another place. This created a problem for the people to go from one place to another place to cast their vote. So all these activities, fraud activities they conducted, and because of that only PRI always won the election. So here the question is that whether in these two countries, in China and Mexico, this feature is existing or not. A democracy, if a country wants to be called as a real democracy, what feature should be there? There should be free and fair election. Can be called China and Mexico, these countries, as democracies? No, because here free and fair elections not allowed. In China, people had no choice. Only one political party, even though if they are not satisfied with the Communist Party of China, but still there was no other choice for the people. Always they should choose the same party in power. Even though they know party is corrupted, party is very bad, party is not at all working for the welfare of the people, party is not at all understanding the feelings of the people, but still there is no opportunity for the people to change the party. But in case of India, if we are not satisfied with the BJP party, we can change another party, Congress party or Communist party or Janata Dal or any such kinds of parties we can choose. But because our country is a multi-party nation, but in China it is a single party nation. Only one political party is allowed to function, that is Communist Party of China. Even though if people are not satisfied, they should choose the same party in power. So we cannot, here people have no choice, and moreover all the candidates should be the members of Communist Party of China. So there is no independent candidates. So here free and fair election is not happening in China. And the case of Mexico, those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. That is not happening in Mexico because they are doing fraud activities and malpractices, and through these fraud and malpractices they are always winning the election. They are not allowing other political parties to win the election or other party representatives to win the election. So these two countries cannot be called a real democratic nation. Here in both these countries elections are conducting, but still cannot be called as real democratic nation because this feature is not existing in these countries. So if a country want to be called as a real democracy, that in that country free and fair election should be there, and moreover those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. This feature also should be there. Then only that country can be called as a democratic form of government, real democratic form of government. Otherwise these two will be called pretending democracies only. Now let us see the third feature of democracy, to know deeply whether a country is a real democracy or a pretending democracy. Third feature is that one person, one vote, one value. In a country, all the adult citizens must have one vote, and everyone's vote should have equal value. See here, in a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote, and each vote must have same value. So in a country, we know that upper class people will be there, lower class people will be there, rich will be there, poor will be there, men will be there, women will be there. Different religious people will be there, different language speakers will be there. But all the people, all the adult people of a nation should have only one vote. That means one vote each. And everyone's vote should have same value. No one's vote should have more value than others. Everyone's vote should have same value. Then only a country can be called as a real democratic nation. If that feature is existing only, that country can be called as a real democratic nation. So let's see three examples. In case of in Saudi Arabia, until 2015, even though country was a monarchical form of government, but still assembly members were elected by the people. So until 2015, voting right was not there for women. So in a country, men and women should have equal voting right and their vote should have equal value. Then only that country can be called as a real democratic nation. So here, even though Saudi Arabia is a monarchical form of government, but democratic method of administration want to be followed. For that, equal voting right want to be given. And in case of Estonia, Russian minorities have no voting right. So Russian people were living in Estonia and they become part of Estonia, they become known as Estonian citizens. But since they were called as Russian minorities, even though if they were part of Estonia or citizens of Estonia, but still they had no voting right. And in case of Fiji, two types of people were the Indian Fijian and indigenous or native Fijian. Indian Fijian means during colonial period, Indian people who went to Fiji to work in plantations and become part of Fiji and they lived there itself are now known as Fijian citizens. They are known as Indian Fijian. So, during the time of election, native Fijians' votes have more value than that of Indian Fijian. So that is what we can say that these countries cannot be called democratic countries because this feature is not existing. If a country want to be called as a real democratic country, what feature should be there? Every adult citizen of a country should have one vote each. And each vote should have, or everyone's vote should have equal value. If this feature is existing only, a country can be called as a real democracy. Otherwise, that country will be called, otherwise only simply elections are conducting, and if this feature is not existing, such countries are called only pretending democracies. Now, let us see the fourth and final feature of a real democracy. If a country want to be called as a real democracy, this feature also must be there. A democracy, a democratic government rules within limits set by constitutional law and citizens' rights. Which means an elected government cannot do whatever it wants, whatever it likes. It must be always, all the governments and elected governments' decisions must be always based on constitutional law. And a democratically elected government must be always ready to protect citizens' rights. Instead of violating citizens' rights, it must be democratically elected government must be ready to protect citizens' rights. Then only such a country can be called as really a real democratic nation. If a government, after being elected, if a government is doing whatever it likes by violating constitution, by misusing constitution, such a government cannot be called a real democratic country. If a government is not at all protecting the interest of the people, not at all protecting the rights of the people, that government also cannot be called a real democratic nation. Let's see one example. The case of Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, one political party was there which was called ZANU-PF. Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. That is the full form of this political party. Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Front. And its leader was Robert Mugabe. So this party achieved independence from white minority in 1980. And since then, for a long period of time, the same party always won election. Like in Mexico, PRI. In Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF continuously ruled for many years. President Robert Mugabe emerged. He was a very popular leader. He made active efforts against white people for getting freedom for Zimbabwe. So he was so popular. So Robert Mugabe changed the constitution many times for increasing his power. And this party always harassed opposition party workers. Their meetings disrupted, party activities harassed, party workers were tortured. So opposition parties were not allowed to function properly. And moreover, public protests and demonstrations. Whenever people criticized, even though if people were not satisfied, they had no right to make any strike or demonstration against Mugabe or against government. Because any public protest or demonstrations were declared as illegal. If anybody tried to make any strike or demonstration, such people were arrested and brutally punished by police. TV and radio were controlled, which means media was under the control of this party. Media was not at all able to give any news, any information against the interest of ZANU-PF. Even some court judgments were also ignored. Judiciary was also under the control of this political party. So such a country cannot be called a real democratic nation. Because here the party or government always violated the constitutional law and violated citizens' rights. Such a government or such a nation cannot be called a real democratic nation. So in a real democracy, a government will always follow constitutional procedures, constitutional laws, and always will try to protect the rights of the citizens. But in case of Zimbabwe, all this is not happened. And so this feature is not existing in Zimbabwe. So if a country want to be called as a real democracy, all these four features should be there. First of all, in a democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. If a country want to be called as a real democracy, the final decision-making power must rest with those elected by the people. And if a country want to be called as a real democracy country, there should be free and fair election, and those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. That feature also should be there. And third one, we have seen that if a country want to be called as a real democracy, all adult citizens should have one vote, and everyone's vote should have equal value. And finally, a democratic government should rule within laws, within rules set by the constitutional law and citizens' rights. If all these features are existing in a country only, that country can be called as a real democracy. Otherwise, all the countries will be pretending democracies. So read this section very thoroughly and understand all these features very clearly.